This is Leicester Town Centre, the scene of a brutal attempted murder that launched a 3-year investigation in 2015. That crime was brought to justice thanks to the omnipresent eye of CCTV that has become instrumental in criminal convictions.
A moving picture of what's going on that can be really, really helpful to a jury.
But there is a fear those juries are being misled by the interpretation of poor quality CCTV images by forensic experts.
I don't have full confidence in the way it's being used at the moment. The facial comparison side of things will always have an element of subjectivity.
And there is also a risk of racial bias.
When people are recognising faces or comparing faces of different ethnicities to themselves, they naturally find the task harder.
So this is the man the police identified as the attacker, and he was identified and named in court as your son Laban.
Sawirkan wiilkayga ma aha.
The forensic science regulator is responsible for standards. Until 2021, Professor Gillian Tully was at the helm and raised her concern that they were not being met. Speaking exclusively, she warns that little has changed.
When it comes to interpretation of CCTV images, it's difficult for us at the moment to have the assurance that it's done properly across the board, because as far as I'm aware, none of the organisations or people who are carrying out the interpretation of the images has achieved the quality standards that are set by the forensic science regulator.
But that would mean that we don't know how good interpretation is in this country.
As a broad statement, yes, I'd agree with that.
Isn't that worrying?
It is, yes.
The concern is over cases reliant on CCTV, where facial comparison is presented with near certainty. At best, confidence is undermined, and at worst, there is a danger of a miscarriage of justice, especially when the identity of a suspect is disputed, like here. The story you're about to watch revolves around the identity of this man known as Person A. In Leicester's High Cross shopping centre, he and his associates entered a violent dispute with a rival group. Amidst the melee, Person A is floored. Security arrive and the incident ends. But this is only the beginning of a revenge attack led by Person A. On camera, Person A and his company begin making phone calls to rally support, which culminated with a huge turnout here at Leicester's Bede Park. It was here the young men who had beaten Person A were believed to be with their friends, and here where they were chased. All escaped, apart from one victim. That young man found himself right here, by himself in the middle of this park. He was outnumbered and had nowhere to go. The prosecution told the court that he was left for dead and that nobody in the group of attackers called the police. It was only because of passers-by that the victim managed to live. This is Person A on CCTV, and this is Laban Yadi Yadi, the man identified by a facial comparison expert. In court, the judge asked the jury to be sure that Person A is Laban Yadi Yadi. The jury were not unanimous, but a majority verdict convicted the 19-year-old, and he was sentenced to 18 years for attempted murder. He and 22 of the young men involved were further convicted of violent disorder. The build-up of that attack has been captured in granular detail, but just who that CCTV shows has been the subject of much dispute among Leicester's Somali community. Person A has been identified locally as another Somali man. We know that the police left messages for him, but opted not to arrest. This identity dispute heard in court continues through Laban Yadi's parents. So this is the man the police identified as the attacker, and he was identified and named in court as your son Laban.
Sawirkan wiilkayga ma aha. It's not Laban. To another person. So the people, they said, this is Laban. And mother, wiilkayga ma aha wiilkan.
Some people say that the love of a mother and a father can be blinding. Is this your son, but you're unable to see it?
You can imagine. Your son, who is a very innocent, he didn't do what the charge they make to him, and saying, I'm not this person. And we are witnessing that he is telling the truth and charged crime he's not committed. You understand? So you can feel as a father what I feel. Big sorrow, big disappointment.
So your son was found guilty of the offence by a jury of 12. The CPS was satisfied. The police were satisfied. He made an appeal and he lost. That's several stages of the system, each satisfied that Liban was guilty and the suspect. To many, that's the system working.
wiilkayga inuusan wiilkaan ahayn yacni qaladna meeshaas lagu xukumay waa dareemaysaa hooyo wiilkeedii micnaha aan ahayn oo la leeyahay waa wiilka laba qof oo hal qof laga dhigayo marka soo qalad aad u weyn meesha inuu ka jiro ayaan u jeednaa.
In this attack, the victim was unable to identify his attacker, but is happy with the conviction. We're looking at this case to assess just how CCTV evidence is used and what it reveals about how justice works. Dr. Morton was a forensic examiner for the Metropolitan Police.
How would you rate the quality of these images?
In a lot of these images is quite far away from the camera. That means that the resolution of the face in the overall image can be quite low. The forensic experts are really focusing in on that facial feature detail. So how well resolved and how clear is that facial feature detail in the imagery? And if it's not very clearly resolved, then there's a higher likelihood that somebody else could be mistaken for that person.
The report said that there was strong support that person A was this man here. As an expert, would you be confident that these are the same people?
I'd be unable to make that decision just looking at these images here. One thing that we do know from when we test experts is that they can give different opinions.
Does ethnicity play any factor in the way that people are interpreted in CCTV?
So when people are recognising faces or comparing faces of different ethnicities to themselves, they naturally find the task harder.
And that concern has been expressed in this case. Do you believe that Liban's ethnicity, as being Somali, was a factor in him being prosecuted?
Absolutely. Liban is in custody because you are Somali, and the person who committed the crime is Somali. You understand? We all Somali, we know each other, and we are together, and we look like each other. Anyway, by the way,
Same
we look
colors.
like very unique community we are. So the only thing she thinks that they are both Somali. So you are Liban.
The police declined our request for an interview and gave us this statement.
When carrying out any investigation, officers work to gather the full range of evidence available. In the case of Liban Yayare, the jury reached a guilty verdict having considered all the evidence presented. Following an appeal by Yayare, the case was subsequently further heard in the Court of Appeal, where the conviction and sentence were both upheld.
The verdict may be in on Yadi Yadi, but it's just as damning for CCTV too. The former regulator says there's a long way to go until we can have faith in the way it's used.
I don't have full confidence in the way it's being used at the moment, particularly on that comparison side. The benefits of getting the science right are enormous. They're all about confidence in the criminal justice system and about reducing the risk for errors and reducing the risk of miscarriages of justice.
This is an area of growing concern. There is fear that suspects are being imprisoned for the crime they did not commit, whilst others walk free for crimes they did. Forensic scientists say the standards need desperately to be raised to ensure justice without fear or favour.